Right, welcome back again. This is now part 3 of the Cambria Mustang funfighter build. Right, following fitting the torque rods, which have gone in well and fortunately are free to move. One was a bit stiff to begin with, but a bit of working backwards and forwards and it's fine. So I've now joined the wings using epoxy. I've used weights to hold the wing down rather than pinning. Just found that worked better for me. There's 25mm blocks under each wing tip and each leading edge at the tip. Blocks not supplied, but just make those from scrap. And that's looking good. Just prior to that I fitted the ailerons, hinging with the miler supplied and also drilling in for the torque rod to come into the aileron. They're all just temporarily fitted, of course. They'll get glued once the covering's finished. So once that's dry, we'll then be on to the next stage. Okay, with the wings joined, the next thing to do was to fit the glass strip along the centre. And then I realised I hadn't actually fitted these blocks at the front. That's not in the instructions. I think the instructions for the wing are generic for probably each of the funfighter warbird type models. So you need to work with the instructions and the plan. They're clearly shown on the plan, and it became obvious that I needed to fit those before the bandage. So I've put those in place, shaped them pretty much as they should be, particularly at the front where the bandage is, and then fitted the glass bandage, and that's all ready and drying now, ready for the next step again. Right, with the wing joined, bandage in place, wings now fixed at the front through the central fix in position. Check the position of the wing back to the tail point to make sure that it's in the correct place. We're now going to fit this block number 22 with ply former 23 glued to the front of it. That ply form was actually a little bit too deep, I had to cut that down a bit, and then also put in the 2 dowels coming through from the back to mark those position. The inside has also been beveled to match the angle because of the dihedral, and then that's going to go on there now. Just going to glue that in place with some epoxy. Okay, with the radiator block in place, I've now fitted the sheeting to the fuselage part of the radiator and then sanded all that down and given that pretty much the shape of the Mustang there. I think that's probably as far as I'll go with the sanding. I think that's good enough for what this is. And I've now moved on to fixing the tail plane in place. And I always like the wing in place so that I can line up and make sure that the tail plane is level with the wing basically, and square to the fuselage. So I always wait until I can fit a wing before I put the tail plane on. So that's epoxied on now, clamped and drying before I then fit the fin, which I shall do next. Okay, with the tail plane in place, I then fitted the fin, and you can see I've also hinged the rudder and elevators, and then fitted the control horns in place and linked up the control rods to the tail plane and rudder. And the next step then was to connect the other end of the control rods onto the servos. So all that's done now. The next step is going to be fitting the aileron servo to the wing. Okay, so on to fitting the servo for the 2 ailerons. As you can see, I've cut a slot in the wing and glued 2 bearers there to support the servo, and it just sinks into the wing. On the plan it shows a servo on its side back here, which I know a lot of people do that. My preference has just been to sink it in here. So I'm just going to get on and fix that in there now. Right, and there it is, servo in place, and that's pretty much it really. There's only a few things left to do. I'm going to put a cockpit floor in when I find a pilot to go in, final rubbing down, but then I think the construction is pretty much there. There's nothing else I can think of. So with that done, I'll be then getting on and covering it, and I'll come back and show you progress on covering when I get there, which will hopefully be not too long. See you then. I just put it together for a final check before covering. Balance is a bit nose heavy, so I'm going to move the battery, which is currently under the fuel tank, so just behind the cockpit. Hopefully that will help with the CG and get that about right. But apart from that, I was saying I'm going to put a cockpit floor in and then fit a pilot, and then that'll be it. Anyway, we'll have another update when I start covering. So covering was going to be the next stage, but I've decided to show you my balance process for getting the CG right. You hopefully can see that I've marked, as I've got a pencil line on here, which is 95mm back from that front edge there, as on the plan. And I've got a couple of pieces of card here, because I'm going to in a moment I'm going to stand this on my balancing stand, which you'll see in a moment. And so that's just to protect the wing so we don't put any dents inside the wing. I'll just hold it up a little bit closer to the camera so hopefully you can see that. But basically, got a pencil line running straight across there at 95mm back from the leading edge. And I'll show you now how I put that in a little jig to ensure I've got the balance in the right place. What I will say is that originally I had the battery pack under the fuel tank where it is shown on the plan, and that's the typical place for putting the battery. However, it came out quite nose heavy there, so I've now put the battery pack actually just behind the cockpit, so it's sitting here, it's sitting just about here, and I'll have to find a way of fixing that in there, because I think that's probably going to be the position it's going to end up in. So anyway, let's get it in the balancing machine now. Okay, there it is, set in my jig, and it looks perfectly balanced. That is actually 7mm in front of the line that I've marked on the wing at 95mm. But I think that will be fine actually. And having had a look at the Facebook group and comments about balance and the Mustang, someone did actually comment that actually a little bit further forward was a good position to be in. So that's where I am, and I think I'll leave it there. I'm happy with that now, so that should be fine. Right, so the next step will in fact now be covering. Now I've got the balance sorted out. I'll see you then. Okay, well I think that's a convenient point to stop part 3. We'll come back and have a look when I've got into the covering.